Volvió el huracán y un tajo desprendía mis pellejos. El huracán azotaba y levantaba madera cuando ya habían anunciado la calma en las noticias. Los doctores, algunos cubanos, decían que la nena podría usar bikini. Esa nena era yo. Quisiste nacer con prisa, sin pedir permiso, sabiéndote guerrera y dando lecciones. Quisiste nacer para ser querida, para tender un puente a 2 cuadras, para limpiarme las rodillas y seguir caminando. Naciste niño huracán, porque volviste cuando ya pensaron que no vendría.
Muchos appearances, okay, so this is a poem called Appearances, but it's also about what, if not appearing as the Madonna with child, offering a sullen and direct glance at our intrusion, stilled by the gold leaf that has
on your dresser just to test and nerve yourself because you really, really can't live without them. Sometimes you replace that void with a black rosario just to remind yourself of your old self from hundreds of years ago. Sometimes you speak in a language that is so damn accessible, it frightens the whole system, especially when institutions were created to beat it out of you. Sometimes you listen beyond the words that are released so that you can actually validate the energies that were made through and come through generations before you. Sometimes you honor your children despite the tantrums and routineness of it all because you know what it's like to be that young, brown, resilient girl with so much to say. Sometimes you long for connection and manifest it, acknowledging you don't need to do a damn thing because these connections were already made way before you prayed for them. Sometimes you prance and sing and chant in a way that frightens the masses only to acknowledge those who would burn you centuries of masses en aquel entonces. Sometimes you hide from what was always been there just because you're so exhausted you try to convince yourself so much more than the actuality. Sometimes there are times when none of this makes any sense, but someone somewhere reading or hearing all this nods their head in all agreement, and so that's when you know we're here. We're still here.
A song despises the cage it weathers, like a fractured bone forgives itself. Like a good moon carves its oceans askew. Like the human eyes sculpted into a whale sink back to a deeper, older dark. Like hope dismantles the gatehouse in you. Like the dead drag the moats of the heart.
Thank you. Baby money. This is what we call a woven story, so there's 2 stories taking place at the same time. Many, many years ago, when I was just 13 years old, I saw the 2-headed baby floating in its jar of formaldehyde at the carnival by the river on the American side. I threw up. Right there and then, in the middle of the tent, in front of all my friends, as we listened to the man with the microphone barking the baby's sad story in his eerie voice. My friends all thought I threw up because we had just been on the tilt of the world. Next story. The water crawled over the banks of the Rio Grande into her home so suddenly that she had to hoist her 2 small children onto her shoulders and wade out of the rising water to higher ground. The children clapped and cheered for the tumultuous growing river, the rain hitting their faces and soaking their old torn t-shirts and shorts. Soon the river was once again at their feet. She cried. Anger and jealousy raced through her veins. Bending down, she filled her cupped hand with river water and raised it to her forehead in the sign of the cross, letting some flow down onto her lips. She asked the river to be kind to their home, grabbed the children by the hand, and began their way to her sister's cardboard house across town in the outskirts of Nuevo Laredo, right past the dreaded La Loma jail. The fact that the neighborhood was controlled by narcos only made it safer than if the cops still could go in there. She knew they could wait the storm out there safely. I didn't eat well for days, and somehow I knew I would have that same feeling in the pit of my stomach.
Members National Headquarters. I have been known to tell students when they ask what to call me, I have been known to say, you can call me Dr. Barker. You can call me Professor Barker. I'd really rather you call me Wendy. But frankly, as long as you don't call me motherfucking honky bitch. That gives you insight into what those years were like. I learned a lot. And that's true. And there were wonderful kids, don't get me wrong, wonderful kids, wonderful colleagues. I learned a lot. From those years came this book, Nothing Between Us, which we call the novel and prose poems. I was advised to do that so I wouldn't get sued. It's really a memoir. It's a memoir. It is the story of my life in those years. And I'm going to read one of the very few G-rated poems. You can read the rest and find the non-G-rated poems.
We've had a request in the back for an X-rated poem.
I'll end with one called Remedial Reading. And again, just thank you all so much, and Octavio, thanks a million for this wonderful, wonderful experience, and Matthew for all your work. Oh my goodness, and for bringing out the chapbook, we're excited about that, yes. Okay, on to Remedial Reading. The smallest classroom in the 9th grade school. Yellow walls and the ceiling seemed too high. Boxes lined up in bright colors on the tables, each a different level. This class for retards, this a tuning class? The kids swaggered and straggled through the door, unwilling to be seen here. Laminated cards, one at a time. 2nd, 3rd grade skills for 14-year-olds, mostly boys. I'd been assigned to help the reading teacher, her thick gray hair bunched and dipping along with hairpins and combs. Ruth organized field trips, took her own beat-up station wagon. Once she drove us up the coast to the great blue heron's nesting grounds. We walked up and up until we could look straight down into the tops of the big trees. She showed us how to spot the saucers of nests resting in the branches. I never got the kids to move beyond a level or two. Nobody stayed on task. Once I was pronouncing vowels with Lester Sims, light-skinned, freckled, a skinny little dude. O, okra, Oakland, Coke. And O, butter, supper, dove. His eyes shone. He was standing beside me. Doves, he said? We can talk about birds? Sure, I said, and told him about the finches I was raising at home in as big a cage as I could afford. Man, why didn't you say you wanted to talk about birds? He was out the door. Before the bell rang for the next class, he was back. I was putting cards away in their boxes, red-tipped ones in the red box, brown and brown, folding the lids closed. You like pigeons? He grinned. I do, I said. He unzipped his jacket. I don't know how many wings flapped out from him, ruffled my hair, and fluttered all through that yellow room. A sound only feathers can make, as Lester told me every one of their names.
Looking around, and the next time comes up,